You're listening to Murder Not Murdering with Erin,
And Autumn,
a true crime podcast about murder and murdering.
but we are not murderers.
Welcome back to Murder Not Murdering with Erin and a very pissed off Autumn.
This is accurate.
Autumn, why don't you tell our listeners why you're pissed off?
Because the murder conviction got overturned.
Can you even believe it?
No, he's guilty as fucking sin.
Yeah, I have a frustrating case similar that I'm going to do today. So hold on to that anger because it's going to keep coming.
This is just a tale as old as fucking time. He's a rich Southern man who was in power in a area that still believes in the old school mentalities. And here we are crying and no, you're guilty, sir. Guilty.
You're a murderer.
Yes. No one believes you're innocent. I mean, actually, his other son, who knows if his other son believes he's innocent, but apparently his other son got married and named his child after
No.
him. Yes.
That poor kid.
I mean, Erin.
Grandpa murderer?
He gunned down his uncle and his grandmother, and he's carrying this name of this murder.
That's fucking awful. And what a legacy.
What a legacy.
My God. That is so frustrating. I feel like we're seeing more and more of these like technicalities that people keep finding, which means we have very smart lawyers out there, but
which is great. I mean, it's great for the people that are innocent.
Sure.
But this man is not innocent. I mean, I can't even. Like, there's no way he is innocent.
Well, and there's been countless documentaries. I mean, people have deep dived this so hard. We haven't covered this case because it's been done so many times that it's like, come on now. It's crazy. And what if that's your case tonight? And I'm like, we're never going to do that one. And you're like, actually.
I am not on the same page as Erin. It's not my case, but I'm not on the same page as Erin. I don't care how many times the podcast does it or shows or documentaries. I will cover it.
Yes.
I will cover it.
I'm doing I'm straying away from that right now. I'm going to be doing a modern case that is famous. So probably the most famous case I've ever done. So look forward to that because
I'm very excited.
I don't know. Some of it is that I know too much or I've heard too much that I'm like bored with the famous ones sometimes that I'm like, I want to get into the nitty gritty of stuff. However, I know our listeners do love these famous cases and they do want the deep dive. So I am going to do this in hopes that our listeners enjoy it. If you do, please comment. If you don't, don't say anything. If you can't say anything nice.
Didn't someone teach you don't say anything? You can't say something nice.
Just that. I mean, I'm just saying. No, if you don't like it, then that's fine. You don't have to
then
like
skip
it.
ahead.
Exactly.
Skip ahead.
Listen to an older case.
I like the cases that are famous and for myself, I listen to multiple different ones from multiple different angles.
Sometimes hearing someone else's perspective or, you just never know someone.
Other people find things or tell me a fact that I never even knew or didn't hear for before. Like just yesterday, I was listening to a podcast that was covering the Kristen Smart case. And I listened to Your Own Backyard, which is a podcast dedicated to Kristen Smart and is the reason why Paul Flores is in prison, basically, because the podcast opened up the gates to him being tried. So that was amazing. But not very many people we covered it, but not many people have covered it because they feel like, oh, Your Own Backyard did it. And like, what else could I do? But I was listening yesterday to a podcast that I listen to regularly, Going West. It's a really good one. And they were also like, not very many people have covered this. And I was listening to it, and they were just hearing someone else's perspective is fun to me. I like hearing what they think about it or how they interpreted XYZ. It's just, I like things like that.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you get attached to the podcast hosts as well,
Mhm.
then you get to hear their own personal commentary on it, which is
Yes.
always kind of interesting and
I
fun.
love that part. That's like one of my favorite parts.
Yeah. It's so funny because to me, I was just having this conversation with someone the other day. To me, I'm the banter part. I'm usually like, skip it, get to the case. And I know that that's not everybody's thing.
I love banter.
I know
don't skip it.
I'm always shocked when people say to me, I love that part. I love when you guys are talking and you guys are
Yes.
just shooting the shit and stuff. I'm like,
Actually,
really? So
today,
funny.
I had someone tell me that today,
Yeah,
verbatim. They said, "I love your banter."
that is so funny to me.
It was hilarious.
And I think some of it is Autumn and I are not exactly opposites, but we do have lots of differences,
Yes,
right?
and that's what makes our friendship work, I feel like.
I think so too. It's so funny because Lucy was saying to me the other day, she's like, "What do you guys have in common?" And I'm like, "Well, besides true crime, we love our animals," and like I was like
Yes.
things like that. But it's just kind
We
of funny.
like the luxurious things in life.
Mm-hmm.
I like to be pampered. You like to be pampered.
That's true. That's true.
We
Also,
like food.
we we do like food.
We
I
just
mean,
we're just very I mean, we've grown up together.
yeah, it's
And we let
time
each other
too.
be and I think that we just let each other be our genuine selves. Like,
Yes.
you're totally fine with me being a homebody who's not super into partying all the time. And I love that you're out there being a Miss Socialite of the night. Like, we're total opposites, but it works.
Yes. I just so everyone knows, I am not partying 24 hours or a
No,
vampire.
no, no, you're not. But you do have a social life. Like I
Oh,
said,
yes.
social life. Like I didn't say like a
Yeah, I
partier.
definitely have a social life.
Yes.
I love being social. I love going out. I love the nightlife, as Alicia Bridges said. I do.
Yes.
I love it.
And I'm not antisocial. I just like being home. So I
Mhm.
love hosting. Like I'll have everyone over for dinner, lunches, barbecues, parties, birthday parties, Christmas, all the holidays. I love that stuff. I love people. I love
In
being
your
around
comfort
people,
zone.
but in my comfort zone. I'm not really into going downtown, finding parking. Like it's just not me. And that's okay. Like I don't have to be that.
I don't think anybody likes finding parking, but
No.
I
But
will say
it, like, gives me anxiety. Like, I actually have to pull up the map, like, Google Earth it, be like, "Okay, so what's the parking situation look like?" I'm just not that's not me, but I'm also a passenger princess, so if someone else is driving, I'm down. Like, I'll go.
yeah.
I let them figure it out, not in a rude way. Like, if you need to pay for parking, I'm happy to help pay for parking. I just don't wanna be the one doing it.
I just take a car.
Yeah, that works too, but you live so close to
I live
there.
close to everything,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
it's
I'd have
easy.
to it wouldn't be very, very expensive
It'd
for
be
me
very
to
expensive,
take
yeah.
a car down
I
there.
mean, like, for me, it's easier to just take a car, boom, boom, I'm there, I can get in and out easily, especially if I'm going to, like, a music show or music venue or something like
Yeah,
that.
and then you can have drinks and not worry about it, like, take the car
Exactly.
home. I took the light rail to the Mariners game the other day with my parents. I met them
Mhm.
in Shoreline, and we took the light rail down to the
How was
stadium.
it?
It was so like, I've been on the light rail before, but there was a new station that just opened in Shoreline. It was like the north one. It was really nice, and it was really convenient we didn't have to find parking. It was my dad has, like, neuropathy in his feet, and my mom has neuropathy as well, so it was kind of a little bit longer of a walk than the both of them probably liked, but for
Sure.
someone, like, that doesn't have that kind of issue, it was a super easy walk to the stadium from the
Yeah.
light rail.
Just for context, in Seattle, transportation has always been a little bit of an issue for our city. I don't think we have a very good transportation system or we haven't for a long time. The light rail's making a big difference with that. I mean,
Big difference.
our buses are fine, but our traffic is terrible. And it just makes it difficult for getting around. Like, I wish we had a subway system. That would be
That would be
awesome.
so nice, yeah.
But we don't have anything like that. So it is difficult. But also we're a city built on top of a city. So I think it'd
Mhm.
be hard to burrow through all of that.
You know what would be really cool is if we did an episode on the Seattle fires.
Oh, we could totally do that. I have some personal history attached to it. So I
Yeah,
would be that would be an interesting one.
yeah, I think we should do that.
Plus, we all, it's interesting how it all started, but I'm not going to talk
Mhm.
about it because if we're going to do it, I'm not
Yeah,
telling
we'll
you
do it.
anything. I'm
Look
telling you
forward to
none
that
of
case,
this.
guys. Look forward to that.
Yes, it will happen. It'd be really fun to do that episode. Also, you know what I've never done that I really want to do is the Seattle Underground tour.
Yes, I want to do that. Oh my
So
gosh,
maybe
me, you, and Lucy need to do that.
Here's what I think. I think you guys all could just get to sit in on our conversation about this. I think you and I should go to do the underground tours, and then we will do the episode.
Yeah. Do you think Lou would like that?
Probably.
We should
Kind of
take
like
her.
how we did for Alcatraz. Like we went
Mhm.
to Alcatraz and then we did the
then did the
Alcatraz
episode.
episode.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Look
Let's do
forward to
that.
that, folks.
Yeah, let's
Look
do
at us
that.
making plans to get Autumn out of the house.
Listen, I get out of the house. I was at the farmer's market this morning.
Yes. Autumn is religious going to that farmer's market.
I love farmer's markets.
Did your parents go?
Oh, yeah. That's who I go with. I met them for breakfast this morning. We always meet for breakfast.
Yeah.
And then we went to the farmer's market. It was fun. I got a lot of things. I just love supporting local artists and local people in general. So I just love looking at all the things that people have to offer. And I always buy more than I should. And that's okay.
That's okay because you're supporting local artists.
I'm supporting local artists that deserve their artwork to be purchased.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's time for us to get into some murders, a little less farmer's market, more into farmers getting murdered. No, I'm just kidding. Never, none of that.
What? What if I was doing a farmer murder? That would have been weird.
That would have been weird. Yeah. There's no farmers murdered in my case. I'm sorry.
No, but Erin's case is famous, and so is mine.
Yeah, we're doing famous ones. Buckle up. Here it comes.
Are you ready?
I am so ready.
You're going to know it the second I say it.
Okay.
I'm calling this one Till Death Did Them Part.
Ooh.
There are some crimes where the ending feels impossible to separate from everything that came before it. 5 gunshots fired in the dark, a wealthy San Diego neighborhood still asleep before sunrise, a husband dead beside the woman he had recently married, and standing at the center of it all, a woman who, years earlier, had once believed she was building the perfect life. Because the story of Betty Broderick didn't begin with violence.
I thought this might have been it.
It began with expectations. The kind that were quietly handed to the girls in the 1950s without anyone ever needing to say them out loud. Find a good man, support him, raise children, keep the family together. And no matter what happens, make it work.
So sad and frustrating that generations and generations and generations of women had to endure.
And unfortunately, I feel like it's still kind of a thing.
I feel like it's coming back into being a thing.
At least trad wives, and I won't get into that.
Yeah, we're not we can't sidebar that.
For a long time, Betty believed she had done exactly that. From the outside, the Brodericks looked like the kind of family people envied. A handsome, successful husband, beautiful children, a large home in Southern California, money, status, country club circles, dinner parties, the kind of life that looked polished from the outside.
The American dream.
The American dream. Even if the inside had already started cracking years earlier. And maybe that's part of why this case became such an obsession across America. Because people weren't just arguing about murder. They were arguing about marriage. about power, about betrayal, about what happens when one person spends decades building someone else's dream only to realize there may no longer be a place for them in it. And by the time the story finally ended in bloodshed inside a bedroom in San Diego in 1989, the anger between Betty and Daniel T. Broderick III had been building for years. Long enough that nearly everyone around them knew things were spiraling. Long enough that restraining orders had already been issued. Long enough that people had started worrying someone might eventually get killed. But even then, almost nobody imagined it would actually happen. Betty was born Elizabeth Ann Biscaglia.
Oh, that's a big one.
Biscaglia. We're just gonna not even cut this. I'm so sorry, Betty. I don't know. That's an Italian.
We're
name,
doing
I
our
think.
best.
Yes. She was born on November 7th, 1947 in Bronxville. She grew up in a deeply traditional Catholic family as the third of 6 children. Her father owned a successful plastering business. Her mother stayed home raising the children. Structure and expectations shaped nearly every part of life inside the household. Years later, Betty would describe her upbringing almost like preparation for a role she had been assigned before she was old enough to understand it. You become a wife, you become a mother, you support your husband. That was the blueprint. And for Betty, the future seemed to arrive early when she met Dan Broderick. It was the mid-1960s. She was still a teenager. Dan was older, confident, ambitious, and attending Notre Dame before eventually heading to Cornell Medical School. People who knew him described him as an intensely driven, the kind of person who always seemed to know exactly where he was headed long before everyone else caught up. Betty later said he pursued her relentlessly, not aggressively in a way that frightened her, but persistently enough that she eventually believed his devotion meant permanence. Like no matter how difficult life became later, he would always choose her. The two married in April of 1969 at an Immaculate Conception church in Tuckahoe, New York. And almost immediately, adulthood arrived all at once. Betty became pregnant during their honeymoon. Children followed quickly after that. Kim, Lee, then later sons Daniel and Rhett. Another baby boy died just 4 days after birth.
Well, that's sad.
A loss that quietly settled into the background of the family's history, but never fully disappeared. It's really, really difficult. Meanwhile, Dan's ambitions only grew larger. After earning his medical degree, he made an announcement that surprised even Betty. Medical school wasn't enough. Now he wanted to become a lawyer too. So while Dan attended Harvard Law School, Betty became the one holding everything together. She worked jobs whenever she could, sold Avon products, sold Tupperware, raised children largely on her own while Dan buried himself in school, internships, networking, and the future he envisioned for himself. And for years, Betty believed the sacrifices were temporary, that eventually all the pressure would lead somewhere stable, somewhere safe. And in a way, it did, at least financially. By the late 1970s, the Brodericks had relocated to San Diego, where Dan's career exploded. He became a highly successful medical malpractice attorney, a rare combination of doctor and lawyer that made him incredibly valuable in the courtroom. Money started coming fast. The family moved into affluent neighborhoods. Their social status climbed, and outwardly they appeared successful in every way people measure success. But underneath that polished image, something inside the marriage had started shifting. Quietly at first, then all at once. In 1982, Dan hired a 21-year-old legal assistant named Linda Kolkina. Linda had previously worked as a flight attendant for Delta Airlines. She was young, blonde, energetic, and suddenly spending enormous amounts of time around Dan. At first, Betty tried convincing herself nothing was happening. But eventually, the changes became impossible to ignore. Stanton stayed away from home longer. The distance between them grew colder. Arguments became more frequent. And by 1983, Betty had become convinced her husband was having an affair. Dan denied it repeatedly, but Betty believed she already knew the truth. And what made it worse was the feeling that everyone else around them probably knew too.
I mean, most likely, though.
Mm-hmm. That humiliation started eating at her. Not all at once, slowly, quietly, like something rotting underneath the floorboards. And the more Betty confronted Dan, the more hostile things inside the house became. Friends later described screaming matches, cruel arguments, days where the tension inside the home felt impossible to escape. By 1985, Dan moved out. And once that happened, the collapse of the marriage became public. What followed was not simply a divorce. It was war. The legal battle stretched on for years. And in Betty's mind, she was fighting a man who knew exactly how to control the system better than she ever could.
I mean, that's facts, though. I mean,
yes,
he was a lawyer.
He's a lawyer.
Even if that's not his speciality, he has a better understanding of the legal system.
Well, when you go to law school, you go for the whole thing, and then you go into a specialty.
Exactly. Yeah.
So he was versed in this as
exactly.
well. Dan wasn't just wealthy anymore. He was powerful, connected, respected throughout San Diego's legal community. At one point, he even served as president of the San Diego Bar Association. Meanwhile, Betty felt isolated, furious, and increasingly desperate. She later claimed Dan made it difficult for her to find attorneys willing to challenge him aggressively in court. And I don't blame her because I feel like that's an accurate assumption.
It's absolutely fair.
Yes. Whether that fully was true or not, Betty believed it completely. And belief can become dangerous when it hardens into obsession. The divorce became vicious. Arguments over money, property, custody, support payments. Their children were caught directly in the middle of it all. And slowly, Betty's behavior became more erratic and impossible to ignore. She left hundreds of angry voice messages on Dan's answering machine. Some pleading, some screaming, some threatening. At times, she violated restraining orders that specifically prohibited her from going near Dan or his property. Then there was the incident people would remember for the years forward. Betty drove her car directly into the front door of Dan's home. Their children were inside.
Oh my God.
It sounded less like an accident and more like an explosion.
I bet. Jesus.
Children screaming, neighbors staring out windows in disbelief. And even after moments like that, the conflict somehow kept escalating, not cooling down, escalating. Because by then, Betty no longer seemed capable of emotionally separating herself from Dan at all. Every new development in his life felt like another personal humiliation. And then came the moment that may have shattered whatever restraint she still had left. On April 22nd, 1989, Dan married Linda.
Surprise.
Shocked. I tell you, I am shocked.
I mean, honestly, I feel like there's a little bit of validation that might have felt good, even though it sucked. But she was never crazy.
She was never crazy. She knew. She knew.
And she was right.
And she was right. Linda had reportedly become frightened of Betty long before the wedding. She knew about the angry messages, the confrontations, the instability. At one point, Linda even urged Dan to wear a bulletproof vest during the ceremony. It sounds dramatic now, almost unbelievable. But
However,
people close to them later confirmed the concern was real. Dan refused. Instead, plainclothes security officers attended the wedding. But Betty never showed up. The ceremony went on without incident. Still, the fear surrounding Betty lingered in the background of nearly every major event in their lives. And after the wedding, Betty claimed Linda intentionally taunted her. She said advertisements for facial creams and weight loss treatments began arriving in the mail. Whether Linda actually sent them was never fully established, but Betty believed she did. I mean, can you believe that?
I don't believe it. Sorry.
I actually do believe it.
It would be another level of diabolical, but
yeah, and it was kind of petty back then, and I kind of believe it.
It's a petty Betty move.
It's like, it sounds kind of far-fetched, but Linda was a lot younger, and I feel like this was her way of being
Do you think she'd really want to antagonize her after she was telling her husband he needs to wear a bulletproof vest,
Unfortunately, I do.
Okay.
It was very dirty. They were very dirty.
Well, I mean, it was very tumultuous, and it was all based on a lie.
And it was all petty. I mean, she was having an affair with this man. For a long time. So now she won, and she's like sending her taunting advertisements, like, here, you need to get rid of your wrinkles, you old lady, and you need to lose some weight. I truly believe
that's some mean girl shit right there.
Yes, but I believe it. Like, the two of them were petty Bettys. I truly believe it. I really do. But whether Linda actually sent them was never fully established. So that's my personal opinion. There's no proof. But Betty believed she did as well. And by that point, perception mattered more than reality.
100%.
Every insult felt deliberate. Every reminder of Dan's new life felt unbearable. Because while Dan and Linda were settling into newlywed life, Betty felt like she was being erased. The woman who had spent decades helping build Dan's career was now
raise his children,
was now watching another woman enjoy the finished version of the life she believed she had sacrificed everything for. And underneath all of it was rage. Years and years of rage. The kind that doesn't stay at the surface forever. About a month before the wedding, Betty purchased a Smith & Wesson revolver. Then, 7 months after Dan and Linda married, the tension finally reached its breaking point. It was still dark outside during the early morning hours of November 5th, 1989. Most of San Diego was asleep. Inside the house on Cypress Avenue near Balboa Park, Dan and Linda were asleep in their bedroom. At some point before dawn, Betty drove to the house. She used a key she had taken from her daughter, Kim. And quietly, she entered the home. There's something deeply unsettling about the silence that must have existed in those moments. The sounds of footsteps inside a familiar house, a staircase climbed slowly in the dark, 2 people asleep upstairs with no idea what was about to happen. Then suddenly, gunfire. 5 shots. Linda was struck in the chest and head. She died almost instantly. Dan was shot while apparently reaching for the telephone beside the bed. Evidence later showed the phone or answering machine had been removed from the bedroom, preventing him from calling for help. 1 bullet struck the wall. Another hit a nightstand. But at least one of the shots had not killed Dan immediately. Later evidence suggested he may have still been alive for a short time afterward. But Betty would later claim the shooting was not planned, that Linda screaming, "Call the police," startled her, that everything happened suddenly, chaotically. But prosecutors say something very different.
I mean, with the phone removed and all is premeditated.
I mean, why is she coming into their home in the middle of the night with a gun?
In the middle of the just to check on him, to say hi and visit?
I mean, and then someone says, "Call the police," and you shoot him? I mean, Betty.
She also took the key.
Yeah,
from her daughter. That's
from her
all
daughter.
Premeditated.
Yes, absolutely. But prosecutors said something very different. A woman who had purchased a gun weeks earlier entered the home before sunrise, removed the phone, and fired repeatedly at two sleeping people. To them, this was revenge carried out exactly as intended. After the shootings, Betty contacted her daughter, Lee, and Lee's boyfriend. Then she surrendered to police. She never denied what she had done. The question was never whether Betty killed Dan and Linda. The question was, why? And whether years of emotional destruction could explain what happened inside that bedroom. The case immediately exploded across national headlines because suddenly, America wasn't just discussing murder. People were debating marriage itself. Women called radio shows defending Betty. Others were horrified by her. Some saw a woman psychologically cornered after years of betrayal and humiliation. Others saw narcissism, obsession, and entitlement. And inside the courtroom, both sides fought to control that narrative. The defense argued Betty had been emotionally abused and psychologically battered over years of manipulation and cruelty. The prosecution argued she was simply a jealous ex-wife unwilling to accept rejection. Psychiatrists evaluated her extensively. Terms like histrionic and narcissistic personality traits entered public discussion repeatedly during the trial. Meanwhile, the victims themselves sometimes became secondary to the spectacle surrounding Betty, especially Linda, a 28-year-old woman who, depending on who was telling the story, was either portrayed as a homewrecker or another victim entirely. The first trial ended in a hung jury. Some jurors believed Betty acted without full premeditation and argued for manslaughter instead of murder. Others believed the killings were absolutely intentional. The divide reflected what was happening across the country. People could not agree on who Betty Broderick really was. A mistrial was declared. But prosecutors tried the case again. And during the second trial, the outcome changed. Betty Broderick was convicted of 2 counts of second-degree murder. She received a sentence of 32 years to life in prison. And in many ways, that still didn't end public fascination with the case. Because over the years, Betty became something unusual in true crime history. A convicted murderer with a large number of supporters. Books were written. Television movies dramatized the story. Talk shows interviewed her repeatedly. Decades later, the series Dirty John introduced the case to an entirely new audience. And every time the story resurfaced, the arguments resurfaced too. Was Betty Broderick a victim before she became a killer? Or was she always someone who needed control so badly that rejection became intolerable? Maybe the reason this case still unsettles people is because there's no version of that it feels simple in. There's betrayal here, manipulation, obsession, humiliation, anger that built slowly over years instead of seconds. And somewhere inside all of that are 2 people who lost their lives inside a bedroom just before sunrise. Betty spent the remainder of her life in prison at the California Institution for Women in Chino, California. At parole hearings years later, officials expressed concern that she still justified the killings and showed little genuine remorse. Parole was denied in 2010, denied again in 2017. She would not have been eligible again until 2032, but she never reached that hearing. On May 8th, 2026, officials confirmed that Betty Broderick had died after being hospitalized days earlier. She was 78 years old.
And that's why I knew this was the case you were doing, because it's been all over the news.
Mm-hmm. And even after her death, the debate surrounding her story continues. Because the Betty Broderick case forces people into uncomfortable questions. How much emotional damage can someone absorb before they break? How much responsibility belongs to the person who finally commits violence? And how much belongs to the years that came before it? And at what point does understanding someone's pain become dangerous? Maybe that's why this story has lasted for decades. Not because people agree on Betty Broderick, but because they don't. Some people hear this story and see calculated revenge. Others hear it and see the slow collapse of a woman who built her entire identity around a marriage that eventually discarded her. But no matter which version people believe, the ending remains the same. A quiet house in San Diego, 5 gunshots before dawn, and a family that never recovered from what happened inside that bedroom on November 5th, 1989. My sources were Wikipedia, ABC, New York Times, ID Channel, Ladies Home Journal, and the Los Angeles Times.
I think the thing about this case is that it's so similar to so many other ones that it resonates with people. And the fact that she spent so much time and energy into this marriage and raising the children and everything.
And when he was in medical school and then when he was in law school, she was floating them financially.
Yeah.
So because she believed that once he became these things that he was striving to be, she would be taken care of. It would be her turn to relax and enjoy the fruits of their labor. And then said he was having a side piece and divorced her and married the side piece. I could understand how fucking mad she would be.
Well, and I think that that's the thing that resonates with people. Do I believe it's premeditated? Yes, I do believe she did that.
Absolutely premeditated.
And do I believe that it's somewhat understandable? Yes. I don't think that obviously they deserve to be murdered or any of that.
Absolutely not.
There was a secondary thing that she could have done, and that's to look at it as this was a freedom. And I know that that would be difficult, especially when you see somebody else reaping the benefits of all of the things that you had done to make sure that this man was successful and wealthy. You know what I mean? And with the tumultuous divorce, you can see where the obsession starts, where it starts to build and grow. And if Linda was antagonizing her throughout, you can see why it would make somebody want to go crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that's why so many people are, look at it from her perspective. You know what I mean?
Even today, even on
it's reignited right now.
On Instagram, I was reading through some comments of people when it was people, I think it was, that posted that she died, and I saw it on Instagram.
Yeah.
People were leaving comments big fan of her work. I'm like, oh my God. That is
that's a bit much. Yeah.
I'm not. So obviously we don't condone that she killed them in any way, shape, or form. But I could put myself in those shoes and feel how fucking pissed and how betrayed she was.
I think you can understand where it comes from, especially when back in the day when you did have women who were told this is your job is to raise these kids and lift up this man, right? So you can understand with those years and years of oppression how this all builds up. So I think there's an understanding, especially among women, to understand where it came from and how it got to that point.
Agreed.
But it is, it's never okay to murder people.
Never
obviously.
Okay. Never okay to murder somebody.
But I think that's why she resonates with so many people, because a lot of people have lived that life, have lived her life. So they can understand it and see it from her perspective.
100%.
And that's why you see this care for her because you can
Mhm.
understand how it got to that point. I think it's double things, right? I think that's partly, yes, I think there is narcissistic behavior. I think there were things that were going on along with all of the other stuff, right? I think as much as people wanna be black and white about who she was this and she was this. I think she was a combination of all of the things, right?
I would
Because
agree
we are
with
all
you.
human beings, and that's a human response to things. So and this, like I said, it's all been reignited because I did also see the post that she had passed away. And so I'm glad that you did this case, and I do think it's an interesting conversation. You know what I mean? It
Mhm.
starts a conversation, and that's why it resonates with everyone for so long.
I would agree.
So, mine is fairly similar in some ways because I'm going to be doing the death cap murders, the Erin Patterson mushroom murders.
Okay, I love this one.
And it's very famous. So, here we go. July 29th, 2023. A quiet lunch in a small Australian town. Beef Wellington served on elegant plates. Friendly conversation. Family gathered around a table. Sounds idyllic, right? Within hours, every guest is violently ill, except for one. Days later, 3 people are dead. One man barely survives after weeks in intensive care and a liver transplant. And the woman who cooked the meal, she says it was all a tragic accident. But police soon uncover lies, a discarded dehydrator, internet searches, false cancer claims, missing mushrooms, contradictory stories, and at the center of it all, a soft spoken mother of two named Erin Patterson. This is the story the world became obsessed with, the mushroom murders. And just so you know, before we even get into it, I have a huge update at the end that just happened. The death cap lunch, and one of the most bizarre poisoning cases in modern history. Leongatha, Victoria, Australia, a rural town surrounded by rolling hills and farmland, about 2 hours southeast of Melbourne. Peaceful, slow moving, the sort of place where neighbors know one another and church communities run deep. The guests arriving for lunch on July 29, 2023, believed they were attending a family gathering. The invitation came from Erin Patterson. She had separated from her husband, Simon Patterson, years earlier. Though the relationship remained complicated and emotionally entangled, despite the separation, Erin remained close to Simon's parents, Dawn and Gail Patterson. Also in attendance was Gail's sister and brother in law, Ian and Heather Wilkinson. Ian Wilkinson was a Baptist pastor and, by all accounts, thoughtful, gentle, and respected. The lunch was supposedly important. Erin allegedly wanted to discuss a serious medical condition with them. According to later testimony, she claimed she might have cancer and wanted advice on how to tell her children. That
It's
detail
that's, like, serious.
that detail would later become one of the most disturbing aspects of this case. And the menu sounded upscale. Beef Wellington, a notoriously difficult dish to prepare. Beef tenderloin, wrapped in pastry, usually layered with mushrooms. Everyone ate the delicious meal, except Simon Patterson, the ex husband. He had been invited but declined at the last minute. His text to Erin read, "Sorry, I feel too uncomfortable about coming to the lunch with you, Mum, Dad, Heather, and Ian tomorrow. But I'm happy to talk about your health and the implications of that at another time if you'd like to discuss it on the phone. Just let me know." Erin replied 5 minutes later, "That's really disappointing. I've spent hours this week preparing for lunch tomorrow, which has been exhausting in light of the issues that I'm facing, and spent a small fortune on beef eye fillet to make beef Wellingtons because I wanted it to be a special meal. I may not be able to host a lunch like this again for some time. It's important to me that you're all there tomorrow and that I have the conversations that I need to have. I hope you'll change your mind. Your parents and Heather and Ian are coming at 12:30. I hope to see you there. His decision not to go likely saved his life. Within hours, something was terribly wrong. The guests began experiencing severe gastrointestinal symptoms, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, and dehydration. At first, it just looked like a bad case of food poisoning, but it wasn't ordinary food poisoning. The symptoms escalated rapidly. The victims were admitted to hospitals in Victoria. Doctors soon realized that they might be dealing with something far more sinister: amatoxin poisoning, the toxin found in death cap mushrooms. Death cap mushroom, scientifically known as Amanita phalloides, is among the deadliest mushrooms on Earth. And what makes them especially terrifying is how deceptive the poisoning process is. The first stage looks survivable. Victims experience severe stomach distress, then symptoms may temporarily improve. Patients think that they are recovering, but internally, the liver is being destroyed. The toxins attack cells at a molecular level, preventing protein synthesis and causing catastrophic organ failure. As liver damage worsens, jaundice develops, clotting systems fail, kidneys begin shutting down, confusion and delirium set in. Without immediate aggressive treatment and often a liver transplant, death occurs within days. And the poisoning is agonizing, and there is no guaranteed antidote. Doctors treating the lunch guests quickly realized the situation was dire. Heather Wilkinson died first, then Gail Patterson, followed by Dawn Patterson. And miraculously, Ian Wilkinson survived, but only after spending weeks hospitalized and undergoing that life-saving liver transplant. 3 dead, 1 survivor. Australia was stunned. At first, Erin Patterson appears sympathetic, a distraught host, a woman whose relatives had eaten the same meal that she served. She told investigators she may have accidentally included wild mushrooms. She denied intentionally poisoning anyone. But as police reconstruct events, inconsistencies start to appear almost immediately. To understand why investigators became suspicious, you have to understand Erin Patterson's life leading up to the lunch. Friends and family later described someone who could appear warm and intelligent, but also deeply controlling, deceptive, and manipulative. Her relationship with her ex-husband, Simon Patterson, had deteriorated over years. There was financial disagreements, emotional tension, and ongoing resentments that would not let up. Court testimony would later reveal simmering frustrations with Simon's family, the same people that Erin had asked to lunch for advice. Prosecutors argued that those tensions are significant, not because they provided a clean and obvious motive. They didn't. But because they established long-term conflict beneath the surface of politeness. And investigators discovered something else. Erin Patterson had a habit of repeatedly lying. One of the earliest lies in this case involved mushroom foraging. Erin initially denied foraging for any mushrooms. Then evidence emerged that suggested otherwise. Police also learned that Erin had owned a food dehydrator. She denied that too.
Why? Like, it's so easily known. Like, why would you deny that?
Autumn, the whole thing makes you just want to shake this woman. Then investigators found surveillance footage showing her disposing of a dehydrator at a dump. When the police recovered it, forensic testing allegedly found traces consistent with death cap mushrooms. Surprise.
Yeah.
That was devastating evidence because death cap mushrooms do not accidentally appear in a dehydrator. Prosecutors later argued Erin had intentionally gathered the mushrooms, dried them, and incorporated them into a meal in measured amounts. Then came the issue of the plates. Witness testimony indicated that Erin served herself on a different colored plate than the rest of the guests.
Cute.
Ian Wilkinson later testified to this detail in court, and the implication was chilling. Had Erin deliberately protected herself? Investigators also scrutinized her behavior after the lunch. While relatives were critically ill, prosecutors argued that Erin appeared more focused on protecting herself than helping investigators understand what had happened. Her story changed repeatedly. At one point, she claimed the mushrooms came from an Asian grocery store, one that she couldn't remember. Authorities found no evidence supporting that claim. Justice Christopher Beale later described her explanation as a vague story. Then came perhaps the most disturbing revelation, as if we hadn't gotten there yet, the alleged fake cancer diagnosis. Prosecutors argued that Erin fabricated a medical crisis to lure the family members to lunch. That transformed the narrative from possible negligence into premeditated deception. To understand why prosecutors believed that this poisoning was intentional, we have to talk about the mushrooms themselves. Death caps are not obscure in Australia. Experts testified that public warnings about them had become increasingly common. And just so you know, throughout my research, there are hundreds and hundreds of posts about them online. There's videos on YouTube everywhere. I mean, they were really trying to get the word out there about the death cap mushrooms. It was not something that was just unknown. The mushrooms resemble an edible species to inexperienced foragers, but their toxins are extraordinarily potent. Even a small amount can kill. And cooking does not destroy the toxin, freezing does not destroy the toxin, and certainly drying them in a dehydrator does not destroy the toxin. Prosecutors argued that the mushrooms had been processed deliberately, not accidentally tossed into a meal, deliberately prepared. And beef Wellington was, prosecutors argued, an ideal delivery system. Strong flavors, mushroom paste, pastry, and sauce. A perfect way to conceal poisonous mushrooms. The prosecution's theory was horrifyingly methodical. The defense, however, insisted it was all just a tragic accident. They admitted that Erin had lied, but argued panic and fear explained her behavior, and it was not murder. The case exploded internationally. It had every ingredient for modern obsession: poison, family betrayal, mushrooms, mysterious motives, a suburban mother accused of murder, bizarre forensic evidence, text messages, lies, and survival against impossible odds. Australia became transfixed. News helicopters hovered over the court buildings. Live blogs tracked every witness. Podcasters dissected every detail. People online debated her facial expressions, the tone of her voice, and body language endlessly. The public fascination became so intense that courts repeatedly warned jurors not to conduct research outside. At one point, a juror was reportedly dismissed for discussing the case externally. The trial became one of the most watched criminal proceedings in Australian history, and still, one question lingered. Why? What possible motive justified poisoning elderly relatives with one of the most agonizing deaths imaginable? But no clear answer ever emerged, despite all our needs for explanation, including my own. Because as we know, I want all the answers. Ian Wilkinson, the kind pastor who had just lost his wife, he endured weeks in the hospital and a liver transplant. His testimony became one of the most emotional anchors of the trial. He described the lunch, the illness, the confusion, the devastation, and later, in one of the most shocking moments connected to this case, Ian publicly offered forgiveness. During sentencing, he said, "I am distressed that Erin has acted with callous and calculated disregard for my life and the lives of those I loved. What foolishness possesses someone to think that murder could be the solution to their problems, particularly people who have had only good intentions towards her? I bear her no ill will. In regards to the murder of Heather and Gail and Dawn, I am compelled to seek justice. I say harms done to me advisedly. I have no power or responsibility to forgive harm done to others. My prayer for her is that she will use her time in jail wisely to become a better person," he added. "Now I am no longer Erin Patterson's victim, and she has become a victim of my kindness." That statement stunned observers because the suffering had been unimaginable. He described himself feeling half alive after losing his wife and friends and family. Yet he spoke about forgiveness, not absolution, not denial, but forgiveness. It became one of the defining emotional moments of the entire saga. He spoke of his wife, and this part is sad. "She was wise and had skills that made up for my shortcomings," he said. "Together, we faced life as a team, and we delighted in each other's company. The way our children conducted themselves through this crisis of our illness and subsequent legal proceedings is a testament to her mothering skills. The trauma they experienced at their mother's death and my near death has left deep wounds." Wilkinson said, "It was a truly horrible thought to live with, that someone could decide to take her life." At this point, he removed his glasses, dabbing his tears with tissues. "My consolation is that we will be reunited in the resurrection and age to come." It's so sad and
That is
heartbreaking.
so sad.
And those children lost grandparents and their parent in the same moment. The trial began in 2025. For weeks, prosecutors methodically built their case. Forensic experts, toxicologists, mushroom specialists, family members, and digital evidence analysts. The prosecution argued that the murders were carefully planned. They alleged Erin Patterson researched mushrooms online, collected the death caps, dried them, and intentionally concealed them in the beef Wellington meal. The defense insisted that the deaths were accidental. Erin herself testified for days under intense cross-examination. Here is some of that testimony. "Even after you were discharged from the hospital, you did not tell a single person that there may have been foraged mushrooms used in the meal," said prosecutor Nanette Rogers. "Instead, you got up, you drove your children to school, and drove home. And you got rid of that dehydrator." "Correct," Erin replied. Rogers asked her to read from signal messages she had sent Donald and Gail about the disputed school fees. Erin denied that she was asking her in-laws to make Simon pay for them. "What I wanted from them, whether I communicated it well or not, was I wanted Dawn and Gail to help Simon and I communicate better about it. I thought that if Simon knew that Dawn and Gail knew how he was behaving, it might change his behavior." But Dawn and Gail took Simon's side, which prosecutors alleged made Erin angry. And I would have to agree when the Facebook messages she had sent her friends were read aloud in court. One of them said, "Dawn messaged to say that he and Gail don't want to get involved in the financial things, but just hope we will pray for the kids." Alongside what she disputes was an eye-rolling emoji. Elsewhere, she wrote, "This family, I swear to fucking God. I thought his parents would have wanted him to do the right thing, but it seems their concern about not wanting to feel uncomfortable and not wanting to get involved in their son's personal matters are overriding that. So, fuck them." When questioned, Erin said she was simply venting. The prosecutors accused her of having two faces, a public face of appearing to have a good relationship with Dawn and Gail, and a private face reflected in her Facebook messages. "Are you asking me if I had two faces?" Erin replied, before answering, "I had a good relationship with Dawn and Gail." Yeah, it seems like it, Erin.
Right?
Fuck them, as she
Fuck
said.
them is what she's saying, pretty much, yeah.
Sounds great. Never better.
Mhm.
Next, based on accounts from Ian Wilkinson, the sole survivor, Erin told the group at lunch that she had been diagnosed with cancer after noticing a bump on her elbow, and she asked for advice whether to tell her kids. In court, Erin acknowledged that she had misled Gail about the lump on her elbow in the weeks before the lunch and didn't have any medical issues to communicate
My
either to her guests or her kids.
What a bitch.
"I didn't have a legitimate medical reason. No, that's true," she said. When asked directly, Erin repeatedly denied telling her lunch guests that she had cancer, contradicting Wilkinson's version of events. But she admitted at the end of the lunch, "I'm not proud of this, but I led them to believe that I might be needing some treatment." She said she was following up on a previous ovarian cancer scare. "I can't remember the precise words, but I do know that I was trying to communicate that I was undergoing investigations around ovarian cancer and might be needing treatment in regards to the future. And I can't say the specific words that I used. That's what I remember wanting to communicate. But I thought it was that lump on her elbow." So
Yeah.
now we're going back and forth again.
Right? Like, which one is it?
Well, here comes another thing. Erin said that she had struggled with low self esteem because of her weight and had made an appointment that September to look into gastric bypass surgery. She said, "I was really embarrassed about it, so I thought perhaps letting them believe that I had a serious issue that needed treatment might mean they would be able to help me with the logistics around the kids and I wouldn't have to tell them the real reason." So we're lying, we're excusing her behavior, contradicting her stories. Now she's
Gastric
saying
bypass and fucking cancer are not the same.
well, now she's saying she lied to them in another way because she was gonna get gastric bypass and was gonna make them think that she had cancer so they would take care of her kids.
So they would take care of the kids instead. OMG, man.
Yeah,
What
no.
a psychopath.
It gets way worse. Rogers suggested that Erin Patterson had never planned to account for the cancer lie because, and this is a quote, "because you thought that the lunch guests would die." To which Erin replied, "That is not true." But she would have never had to explain that if they all had died, right?
Right? If they had all died, she would never have had to clear that up.
Erin also said that she accepts that there must have been death cap mushrooms in the meal that she made, an admission she had long withheld, but maintained that she never intended to kill anyone.
Okay.
But she lured them with a fucking lie. It drives me insane. In the immediate aftermath of the incident, Erin told doctors and investigators that she used two kinds of mushrooms in her dish, fresh from the grocery store and dried from a Chinese grocer in the area. But she couldn't remember which one. In interviews
Seems legit.
In interviews with police, she denied owning a dehydrator or foraging for mushrooms. She said on the stand that she started foraging for mushrooms, so she did forage at some point, at trails and botanical gardens in her area in early 2020 and joined Facebook groups to identify and learn about different kinds of mushrooms. The Victorian government issued a warning in early 2023 that death cap mushrooms were growing in the region. Erin repeatedly said she couldn't remember using the naturalist website that marked where the toxic mushrooms had been found, but there was evidence that she repeatedly visited that website.
Oh my God.
She acknowledged to buying a food dehydrator in April 2023, which is funny because that's when they were talking about those fucking mushrooms. But she denied prosecutors' allegation that she traveled to a nearby town to collect death cap mushrooms that same month. She admitted to disposing of the device after the lunch, but said she didn't know that death cap mushrooms had been in it.
Why are you lying?
Well, and I'm going to get more into this, but there was also records of her phone pinging at cell phone towers where those toxic mushrooms were found.
Okay.
She said while she was preparing the beef Wellington, which is typically coated in a mushroom paste and wrapped in pastry, it seemed a little bland to me. So I decided to put in dried mushrooms that I had bought at the grocer that I still had in the pantry. Erin acknowledged that now she thinks there was a chance that some of her foraged mushrooms were also in that Tupperware.
Because you're foraging some fucking poisonous mushrooms.
I mean, come on. She said that the possibility only occurred to her days later as her relative's conditions deteriorated and toxicology tests confirmed death cap mushroom poisoning, that she said was talking to Simon in the hospital when the topic of her dehydrator came up. And he said to her, "Is that how you poisoned my parents?" She said this comment got her thinking about how she did have dried foraged mushrooms in that Tupperware weeks earlier. I was starting to think, what if they'd gone in the container with the Chinese mushrooms? Maybe that had happened, she said, adding that it made her feel really worried because child protection were involved, and Simon seemed to be of the mind that maybe this was intentional. I just got really scared. And I am intentionally making her sound like that, just so you know. It's sarcastic and I'm mad. And she's scared because she committed murder. That's why. Prosecutors said that even as doctors confirmed the patients were suffering from severe toxin syndrome caused by the ingestion of the Amanita phalloid mushrooms, they did not immediately receive the antidote because there was a lack of evidence to confirm they had ingested mushrooms. Erin confirmed she did not tell anyone about the possibility of contaminated mushrooms. The prosecutors asked her why she didn't alert medical authorities as soon as it had occurred to her. She said, "I had been told people were getting treatment for possible death cap mushroom poisoning, so that was already happening." Apparently, she did not feel it was necessary at that point to tell them.
Cool.
Which could have confirmed things even faster and may have gotten them life-saving treatment. She confirmed the next day after everyone got sick, she drove her kids to school, came home, and got rid of her dehydrator, taking it to what is called a secondhand store at a waste facility. Heather Wilkinson and Gail Patterson died on August 4th, and Donald Patterson died the following day. Ian Wilkinson was extubated on August 14th and discharged to a rehab on September 11th. She said she disposed of the dehydrator in the context of thinking that maybe mushrooms that I'd foraged or the meal I prepared might have been responsible for making people sick.
My God.
And after she learned of the deaths, she said, "It was stupid, a knee-jerk reaction, just trying to dig deeper and keep lying. I was scared, but I shouldn't have done it," she added. Erin said that she also did a factory reset. Autumn, this is going to kill you. She did a factory reset on her cell phone during this time of the police investigation because, quote, "I knew there were photos of the mushrooms and the dehydrator, so I panicked and didn't want detectives to see them."
What in the actual hell?
Further covering up her involvement in all of this. That didn't stop prosecutors from showing the photos that she had taken on her phone in April 2023 depicting wild mushrooms and weighing them on a scale. They suggested she had done that to calculate a lethal dose, which she denied.
I fucking cannot.
After hours of testimonies, the jury deliberated and eventually returned a unanimous guilty verdict for 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. The courtroom reaction was immediate. Outside, media from around the world waited. On September 8th, 2025, Justice Christopher Beale sentenced her to life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 33 years. It was the first sentencing hearing in Victoria that was broadcasted live. The case received international coverage. Justice Christopher Beale condemned the crimes. He noted the planning involved, the deception, the lack of remorse, the suffering inflicted on the victims and their families, And by the time she becomes eligible for parole, she will likely be in her 80s. The judge also noted her notoriety will likely result in harsh prison conditions and prolonged isolation. She has been kept in solitary her whole time of being in prison. Still, the sentencing did not answer the central mystery. The motive remained unresolved. Why did she do it? No definitive explanation emerged, and she kept maintaining that none of this was deliberate. And perhaps that uncertainty is part of why this case gripped the world so intensely. Because people desperately want murder to make sense, and sometimes it simply doesn't. Now, for the update. I wish I could tell you that that's where all of this ends, but it does not. A month after the Australian judge sentenced Erin Patterson to life in prison with 33 years of non-parole, prosecutors have appealed the sentence, calling it manifestly inadequate. Her lawyers claimed that she faced unfair and oppressive cross-examination and that the prosecution improperly altered the narrative during the closing arguments to simply a hidden motive. Her defense argues that the judge also incorrectly permitted the cell tower data, digital mushroom sightings, and Facebook messages to be used as evidence. So they're trying to throw all of that part out.
Oh, no.
In November 2025, the Victoria's Court of Appeal granted permission to appeal her convictions.
No.
The exact date for Erin Patterson's upcoming appeal hearing has not been publicly scheduled by the Court of Appeal. However, the case is moving through a structured legal timeline. The Erin Patterson case changed public awareness of the mushroom poisoning overnight. Across Australia, hotlines and health officials warned people not to forage for wild mushrooms casually. Interest in death cap mushrooms have surged globally. 3 people dead. 1 survivor forever altered. A family shattered. Judge Beale said this at sentencing. Your offending involved an enormous betrayal of trust. Your victims were all your relatives by marriage. More than that, they had all been good to you and your children over many years, as you acknowledged in your testimony. Not only did you cut short 3 lives and caused lasting damage to Ian Wilkinson's health, which, by the way, he is still struggling with, thereby devastating the extended Patterson and Wilkinson's families. This part really sat with me. You inflicted untold suffering on your own children, whom you robbed of their beloved grandparents. I will continue to follow up with the appeal, and I will be updating all of our listeners as that unfolds. There's also a new documentary that came out on CNN called Death Cap: The Mushroom Murders. My sources that were used in this episode are from BBC News, NPR, CNN, PBS NewsHour, The New York Times, ABC News Australia, CBC News, Reuters, The Associated Press, The Guardian Australia, The Washington Post, and Sky News.
That is just so fucking frustrating.
I know. And when we were talking at the opening about an appeal, I was like, well, fucking hell, this damn woman.
Right? Like, you clearly, you knew what you were doing. There is no doubt.
Well, and like I said, there's tons and tons of warnings about the death cap mushrooms in Australia long before that time. And then she visited the naturalist website. She was in foraging
over and over again. And then she was in
forage
for them.
But she was in foraging groups on Facebook. It's not like that wouldn't have been brought up. Secondarily, cell phone towers place her where those mushrooms were, which they're trying to throw out on a technicality. The cell phone towers, the photos from her phone that she did factory reset right afterward to cover up her crime, and then also that she the Facebook messages where she's like, fuck them.
Right? Like, what
that
the hell,
shows
dude?
that shows what her mindset
well, and then
was.
she can't remember where she got the other mushrooms, and she just put them in this. Lady, no one believes
a Chinese
you.
grocer. That's all she knows.
A mysterious Chinese grocer. No, you got these mushrooms and you killed these people intentionally.
Well, and she lied over and over again, right? So she lied that she said that I never foraged for mushrooms. Well, we found evidence of that. Okay, I may have foraged for mushrooms. I never owned a dehydrator. Okay, I may have owned a dehydrator and may have taken photos of it on my cell phone that I did a factory reset right after this all went down and disposed of that evidence.
So infuriating.
It's so frustrating, and the fact that she literally is waiting for an appeal right now makes my head wanna explode.
I want to I just wanna shake her. I wanna be like, "What is wrong with you?"
Just 2 slaps. Bap, bap. So, here's the thing. I will keep everyone updated, and I am going to keep watching what happens next as far as this appeal goes, and the fact that they granted it makes me so crazy, but we on a technicality, mind you.
Another technicality. Here we are.
So we will keep you posted on that. Do go to our Instagram page at Murder Not Murdering because we will be posting on there. Slide into our DMs if you have any stories you would like us to cover, or if you want to just say, hey, love your podcast. That's fine too.
Look at our subreddit.
Go to our subreddit. We're
Murder
also
Not
on
Murdering.
TikTok. We're, just check us out. Share with your friends. If you like true crime and you think they will like true crime.
Share with your friends. Sharing is caring.
Tell them about our podcast because we need more listeners and we so appreciate all of you who listen to us every week. New episodes are always out on Mondays. Thank you again for listening to us and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.